once. We can't keep backing up and pretending that all public education, all of our schools, are doing right by our kids. As Michelle pointed out, the charter schools, like our traditional public schools, run the gamut of good, the bad, and the ugly. And as we should do in our traditional schools, as we should do in our charter schools, we should make the good better, the bad good, and do something either to improve the ugly or to put them out of business.
I want to give
because
John
a child, if I can just close with this, a kid only gets 1 year in one grade to get it right while we fool around.
I want to give John a chance to respond, but first, both you and Michelle were a little slippery here on the point, and I'm going to refocus the question a bit and then let John answer it. If you are a harried parent, maybe a single parent, in a place that there's some debate about education, how do you know where to put your kid? How do you make that decision if you're not an education expert? Tom, you first, briefly as you can, and then Michelle, and then John.
Well, the first thing that I do as a parent with 2 kids, and I struggled with this issue, is I think you go and you look at school, and you ask the teachers and you ask the parents. They know. They know what's working oftentimes within a school. You can look at test scores as a part of it, but those are the 2 places I would look to begin with.
Michelle?
I'm scared to death to having to make this decision. I work in this field, and people ask me this all the time, and quite honestly, it's a huge challenge, right? Because on face, you can walk in and a school can be a really, really happy place with teachers who care, important things to me. It's safe. I think that you also need to make sure that you're looking at how is that school performing. We've talked a little bit about test scores. I'm sure we will more. I think that's a really important barometer, one of many metrics that I'd make sure to look at.
John?
I have practical experience in this. I have a 7-year-old daughter. My wife and I live in a suburb of Ann Arbor with a good, maybe not great, school system. And Ann Arbor opened up school of choice last year. We were the first application in the door. I could not believe that morning that there was not a line out the door at the superintendent's office. I said, what a deal. And we got to get in a lottery and figure out which schools. I looked at every data point I could find. I wanted a diverse school. I wanted a school where kids were from not just different colors, but from different backgrounds. I wanted a school that had good test scores. My daughter's in Logan Elementary on the northeast side of town here. There are 27 languages spoken in that school. And through that, my daughter's getting an education that's going to prepare her for the global economy. I'm pretty conflicted about it. I know that I disinvested in the school system in the town in which we live and where I pay property taxes. But as a parent, as a customer of education, I couldn't walk away from that deal.
Here's my problem with all 3 of you. Everybody on this panel is highly educated. Everybody has a white-collar, you might say, job that gives them we're all busy, some time to do these things. How does somebody without this kind of background make these decisions? How does somebody with very limited time, is the system of schools of choice fair to these parents?
There's no such thing as limited time. There's nothing more important than your kid. There is no limited time when it comes to figuring out where you're going to put your kid, no matter who you are.
But there are people, that's nice in theory, but there are people who are working 2 and 3 jobs and running around after a passel of kids and maybe a disabled parent. There are people who don't have that kind of time. And are we running a risk that you're going to get shyster operators? Tom?
Yeah, but there's some of those same parents were getting the shyster operator because they had no choice. If they lived at 47121 Main Street, they went to 47121 Main Street Elementary School. Whether that was a good school or a bad school, they had no choice in that matter. It is unfair, Jack, because we live in a society that is unfair. As Michelle pointed out, just go back to Proposal A for a moment, and she's pointed out that there's great inequities and additional challenges in communities which have struggles economically. And yet, even with Proposal A, which dealt with a lot and closed the gap in the equity, we still provide additional resources to wealthier communities than we do to some of our poor communities. That's state policy built in.
We got to stop for a news bulletin from Steve.
I'm sorry, we're going to get back to discussion in just a minute. I have been told that if anyone is parked in the parking lot where the bike shop is, which is at the front area there off of Stadium, you need to move your car because they're going to be towing cars from there. If you're parked in this area by Wolverine Brewing, you're fine. But if you're parked over by the bike shop, you need to move your car. You can pull around. There's lots more parking behind the side and the back of the building. So sorry to interrupt, but I don't want anyone to get their car towed. So, yes. Question about the parking in the alley. That's good. All right. Okay, that's okay. So it's mainly if you're parked over on the side of where the bike store is, which would be the south side over in that area. I don't want everyone to leave, but but if you are parked there, I don't want you to get towed either. So again, you just move your car towards the back area here, and you'll be fine.
And Jack, one more tough question
Okay.
from you, and we have to move our cars.
You have to move your car?
One more tough question from you, and we have to move our cars.
I see. Well, you can handle them. I want to get to the audience part pretty quickly, but I'm going to, despite what John just said, I'm going to ask everybody one tough question, starting with Michelle. What is, in your mind, job one for fixing the public schools in the state? A concrete, doable proposal. Where should we start to fix the schools in the state?
I think the absolute first step is focusing more on teachers. Ultimately, our education system is about a relationship between a student, a teacher, and the curriculum that they have. We need to improve the quality of teachers across our state. I love teachers, but I think that we need to provide them with more support that they need. They need better mentoring programs. They need better evaluation so that teachers understand where they're succeeding and where they're struggling. We need better teacher preparation programs so that the teachers who are coming into our schools are better prepared to educate children from day one.
Now, is this the responsibility of schools of education? Is it the responsibility of state accreditation programs?
Yeah.
Whose feet should be held to the fire?
I think it's all of the above. Right now, if you're a teacher, your quality of your performance steadily improves from the first year you're in the classroom to the third year, and then you freeze. You don't do any better by students, you don't really do any worse. I think that that's because we stop providing support for teachers after they're there for 3 years, if they're lucky enough to get 3 years of support. If we have university programs that don't only focus on teachers before they get into their classrooms, but also provide sustained support so that they can reflect on their own practice, so that they can set higher, better goals for their students, so that they can interact with curriculum in a more effective way for kids, then I think that everyone benefits.
Tom.
One, I would echo what Michelle just said. Quality teachers matter. Rhetoric from Lansing and Washington has never educated a single child. The only thing that educates our kids is high-quality teachers that know their subject, love kids, have a passion for teaching, and are given the support that they need. I've challenged, in fact, I wrote a piece for the Center for Michigan saying that we should start chartered colleges of education. Those of you who are educators in this room, you know how to educate kids. What if we challenge you to prepare teachers? What if we said to the MEA and the AFT, you develop an educational program in order to prepare our kids for this future that they're going to face? So that's one area. The second is that I go back to what I said before, is to really stop this game of funding our schools like a big poker game. Every year where we slide that $19 billion into the table and say all in on the same bet that we made last year. If we stopped and asked ourselves again, as responsible adults, finding $19 billion, renewable funding, 1.6 billion kids that you had to fund, would you do what we're currently doing? And I think the answer is no. Then the answer needs to be, as a challenge to all of us, what then do we do? How do we use those resources to prepare our kids for the future they're going to face?
John.
Among many good choices, in my personal opinion, I would say early childhood, preschool and early childhood development programs. There are 40,000 4-year-olds in Michigan, and enough to fill Comerica Park, who are qualified for Head Start and other early childhood programs who are not in them this year because there isn't money. And reams of research show that preschool can get kids from disadvantaged backgrounds off to a better start earlier and can save all kinds of money on the back end and can help them lead lives of achievement and prosperity.
Well, I sense there's a lot of questions out there in the audience, but first, we're going to let you vote. We believe in voting early and voting often. And John, this is a project of the Center for Michigan, so why don't you take over and do this?
I'm glad to do so. Courtney, I'm going to hand it to you. Courtney is our Director of Engagement. Why don't you lead people through this?
It was off the script. Sorry. I didn't know I was going to be on the spot here. So as everybody's discussed tonight or mentioned, we're launching a year-long community engagement campaign where we're going to be going around the state everywhere and running about a 90-minute session talking about student learning and getting thoughts from the community so that we can use that to educate our legislators and the governor on what people are saying instead of going the opposite direction and hearing what's coming from the top. So we are just launching, and in fact, we had our first community conversation last night. Went very well. We have some adjustments to make, but that's going to happen throughout the year. So we're going to do a little sampling of some of the questions that we're using in the discussion statewide. So I'll start. Did you guys all get the little fancy calculator looking things? Aren't they cute? Please return them. We need them. Just leave them with Amber at the door or with me or on the table, or just throw them somewhere, but we'll collect them at the end. So use that. That's your little tool of democracy this evening. So the first question is, what letter grade do you give the statewide, the whole state, public education system? I'm not surprised. So 44% of you said that you give Michigan, the state of Michigan's education system, an average grade. Give them a C. 29% of you say, no, not so much. We think that things could be a lot better. Only 4% of you give it an A. I'm surprised that it wasn't lower, because everything I've seen over the last few tests of this process and this question, we don't get a lot in that category. So it's interesting. We'll talk about it. So I'm going to give you a chance to answer another one. This time, instead of the state, look at your local school district. So what letter grade do you give your local public school system? And here we go. All right. Are we surprised by that? I'm laughing because this is what I've seen before. People tend to give their local community a higher grade because they know they're more connected to it. They know a lot more about what's going on. So this is interesting. The vast majority of you say at least an A through a C. And I want to know who that 2% is, but we won't go there. It's anonymous.
Courtney, I think it kind of mirrors what we think about Congress and our congressperson,
that's
right?
a good point, yep.
You know, Congress is not so good, but our local congressperson is.
Yep, good point. Okay, and last question. The current Michigan public pre-K through 12 system offers taxpayers a good return on investment of their tax dollars. So more than 50% of you said that you either disagree more than 40% of you disagree, period, either strongly or just a little bit. So this is interesting, and again, not that surprising, but we're going to get into this discussion. So thank you guys for voting. Thank you for the feedback. And please don't leave with your clickers tonight. They're rather expensive, but you can't get very far with only one of them anyway, so just give them back.